Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. Developing this afternoon, we're learning more about an ICE raid this morning in a St. Paul neighborhood. It happened near 600 Rose Avenue on the city's east side. That's not far from the St. Paul Public Library in Arlington Hills and East Emmanuel Lutheran Church. We do know that St. Paul police were on scene and they tear-gassed protesters who had formed a human chain blocking authorities from entering a home. Police say there was a medical emergency and they needed to move people back to get into that home. Right now, it's not exactly clear what agents were doing here. The operation appeared to focus on a house in the neighborhood. Our cameras did capture someone being taken from the home in handcuffs. That person was put in the back of a vehicle and driven away. We have reached out to ICE and to federal agents for more information on exactly what was happening today. Our other big story right now, a winter storm warning is now in effect as we expect snow to cover Minnesota in the upcoming hours. The National Weather Service calling overnight travel conditions hazardous and impossible. That's why our weather team has issued a KARE 11 weather impact alert with the worst conditions hitting as you get off of work today. We'll check in with the weather team in just a little bit. Well, now that we know that the Twin Cities could get bombed with snow tonight, it makes the tips from a local car shop all the more critical to stay safe. If you haven't done a basic maintenance check on your car, your window of time is closing. Julian Castillo is manager at Victory Tire in Brooklyn Park. He says your car works harder in the cold and snow, so brake pads and coolant levels are important boxes to check. But the most important maintenance, he says, are tires. Inflation is important as you lose 1 to 2 pounds per square inch of air pressure for every 10 degrees colder it gets. But Castillo says he's seen a lot of cars come in with a bigger, more expensive problem this fall: bald tires that aren't equipped to handle the incoming snow.
A lot of people think that, oh, my tires look okay, they could be okay. In reality, as soon as they start getting below that 3/32nd, realistically 4/32nd threshold, it's time as a safety precaution, because at that point the siping has worn down to where you're not going to get adequate traction going to the snow.
Castillo also reminds us of some essentials to keep in a car. He says at the bare minimum, jumper cables and an ice scraper shovel are critical if your battery dies or you go into a ditch. AAA also recommends picking up sand or cat litter for traction control. It's also worth it to pack an extra coat, blanket, and gloves, hand warmers, things like that in the car to keep you warm if you're waiting for help on the side of the road. As the weather gets colder, local agencies are scrambling to help ease the strain of rising electricity prices. Minnesota ranks 13th in states where electric bills have increased the most. Data compiled by USA Today from the Energy Information Administration shows a 10% increase year over year, way higher than the national hike. The average bill right now is nearly $140. Federal funding for the Energy Assistance Program that helps low-income families heat their homes has not come through, even after the government shutdown ended. Ian Russell has more on the local impact.
As holiday travel moves through the cities, so too does winter weather.
I know it's hard. It's going to get cold.
Plunging temps and possible snow will have many of us turning the heater on at home in the coming days. And close to 300,000 Minnesotans rely on energy assistance from the state.
We usually have our money by this time.
The only problem, the state doesn't have the money to give right now.
I have been doing this for 18 years, and there's only been one other year that we have gotten our funding in December.
Tammy Alto is the director of energy assistance for Community Action Partnership of Hennepin County. They act as a kind of middleman, connecting Minnesotans to energy assistance to heat their homes. Right now, though, they can't do that, as federal dollars meant for that still haven't been delivered.
Without our funding right now, their dollars have had to stretch even further.
We've been keeping a very close eye on things.
While the funds aren't here yet, Lissa Polish with the State Department of Commerce says signs point to them arriving soon.
That they anticipate the funding release to occur by the end of November 2025.
Polish says they're expecting to receive around $112 million for energy assistance and have already had more than 90,000 applications.
We've already processed over 70% of those, and that means that the households who are eligible will be able to start receiving those benefits as soon as we have that federal money.
Good news as the weather turns and thousands of us turn up the thermostat.
Just having a little patience right now. The money is on its way.
New details this afternoon after a man was shot by an officer in Plymouth early this morning. It happened just before 5 this morning in the 6100 block of Quintwood Lane. Authorities tell us an officer was responding to a domestic disturbance involving a man knocking on a residential window. The officer confronted the man, who police say was armed, then discharged their weapon, striking him. The man was transported to a hospital and is expected to be fine. The officer was not hurt and will be placed on critical incident leave as authorities investigate the incident. New today, U.S. officials meeting with a Russian delegation in Abu Dhabi, aiming to finalize the peace deal with Ukraine. Ukraine voicing optimism today as officials say new talks with an American delegation have produced changes to the initial peace deal that was largely viewed as favorable to Russia. President Trump has a Thanksgiving deadline for both parties to agree to the terms. NBC's Keir Simmons has the latest from Dubai.
Hey there, good day to you. A U.S. official confirming to NBC News that there are talks underway between the U.S. and Russia in Abu Dhabi here in the United Arab Emirates. Those talks, according to that U.S. official, between U.S., Russian and separately Ukrainian officials behind closed doors in Abu Dhabi. A U.S. Army spokesman saying the talks are going well. There has been an angry reaction from Moscow, the Russian government accusing Europe of leaking information about the talks in order to reach an agreement. That U.S. official says U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll is here in the UAE for those talks. He was in Geneva for the talks there between the Europeans and the Ukrainians. At that meeting, a 28-point plan put together by the Trump administration that was criticized for having very few compromises on the Russian side, that was adapted and changed. Now there is a new plan, and we assume that that is being discussed with the Russians. The Secretary of Ukraine's National Security Council saying we expect to arrange Zelensky's visit to the US as soon as possible, suggesting it could happen in November. So, of course, that's by the end of this week to, quote, finalize the last points of the deal. But some of the issues in all this that the Europeans and Ukrainians will have pushed for will have been that Ukraine is allowed to determine its own territory and its security, and that will contradict some of the demands by the Russians. So the question remains, with President Trump's Thanksgiving deadline looming, is there going to be a deal?
Well, as peace talks continue in Abu Dhabi, Russia launched a series of attacks on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, killing at least 7 people and injuring 20 overnight. Ukrainian officials said that Russia fired 22 missiles and over 460 drones. Russian Defense Ministry said it targeted military industrial facilities in response to alleged Ukrainian attacks on civilian targets. These statements have not been confirmed, while authorities have said that a Ukrainian strike today left 3 people dead in Russia. New today, the Justice Department says it will appeal a federal judge's ruling throwing out criminal charges against former FBI Director and New York Attorney General Letitia James. The judge found that President Trump's hand-picked interim U.S. attorney in Virginia, the one he picked to prosecute these cases, was not lawfully appointed. She was also the only lawyer to sign the Comey and James indictments. The government could try to bring charges again, though the statute of limitations for the Comey case may have run out. Right now, thousands of seniors in Minnesota are facing a tough choice: shop for a new gym, shop for a new health insurance, or stretch their fixed incomes even further. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota just made a sudden change to a popular program that covers gym memberships. And as Kent Erdahl explains, the timing makes it even harder.
YMCA Southdale in Edina is more than a gym to many of its members.
I think that's the one thing that keeps me going.
Linda Berg says the equipment here
This is my favorite bike.
has helped her stay healthy, and the community
We all know each other by our first names.
has helped her stay grounded through tough times.
I'm a caregiver of my husband. It has meant everything.
Which is why everything now feels so heavy
I just found out about it.
after learning that Blue Cross Blue Shield is dropping all Twin Cities YMCA's and Lifetime Fitness locations covered under its Silver Sneakers benefit, citing high cost pressures related to Medicare coverage.
Just was really upsetting.
It was a surprise to us as well.
Terrell Benton says the YMCA of the North had an agreement with Blue Cross through next year for the roughly 7,800 members who use Silver Sneakers and first learned of the change last Wednesday.
Up until the morning of Friday, November 21st, we thought we had an opportunity to perhaps affect something differently to ensure that these approximately 7,800 members would not lose access on January 1st. And we're pretty surprised even up until Friday when we found out we would not be able to affect any change.
They're now offering members information on Medicare Advantage plans that still include them as Silver Sneaker sites. But open enrollment closes on December 7th.
It's kind of between a rock and a hard place because people don't want to give up their providers and their drug coverage, but they still want this benefit that helps to keep them healthy.
We cannot change health care plans. My husband has cancer. His medication is at Mayo. It's very, very expensive.
Blue Cross says some 600 gyms, including Planet Fitness, are still covered under its scaled-back program.
I'm going to change. I don't want to, but maybe there's an option. I don't know.
But for Linda,
I will not go to other places.
Despite living on a fixed income,
I will have to pay.
There is no choice to make.
It's my place to get away from home. I can do it.
As a nonprofit, Terrell says the YMCA of the North is currently working on a membership option for seniors like Linda who can't switch their Medicare Advantage plans because of doctors or networks. He says it would involve paying out of pocket, but would be at a reduced rate. Now, he doesn't have the details yet, but he hopes to have something soon. Stick with us. There's more news and weather after the break.